I got interested and talked to David about this, doing a Montana track. Both of us grew up in, you know, my history, and David's history is parallel, except he grew up on a ranch, good-sized ranch out of Billings. And he graduated from Billings High School a couple of years after you and I did. Then he went to the Marines. Along the way, and as he finished high school, he got seriously interested in the legislature, and he had an internship over in Helena before he went in the Marines, and then I think that's correct, isn't it?
I was the reading clerk in the state senate.
Oh.
My junior year at the university.
And David's grandfather ran for governor as a Republican. His family's been Republican. And his father was in the legislature for 20 years?
16.
Yeah.
Well, your dad and my dad probably knew each other. My dad was in the legislature from 42 to 44.
Oh. No, that was before my dad's time.
Before your dad's time. Yeah.
My grandfather ran. My father was in the legislature from 50 through 68. He lost once, and then he was in the Constitutional Convention. But my grandfather was in the Senate from 1918 to 26. And he got beat for re-election, and he had a great. My grandfather I've been trying to research him, and he had a very strong relationship with the Anaconda Company, and Joe Dixon was the governor trying to levy a tax on metals, and so. Joe Dixon and my grandfather were both Republicans, but there were bitter battles, and Joe Dixon tried to defeat my grandfather in 1922, and he failed at that time. But when my grandfather came back up in 1927, and when Joe Dixon ran for re-election in 1924, my grandfather covertly campaigned against him. And then my grandfather lost in 1926. And the local newspaper reported that, yes, my grandfather had not supported Joe Dixon, and the voters remembered. That was the explanation.
Yeah.
Anyway, then my grandfather tried to make a comeback in 32, and he lost the nomination for the state house in Stillwater County, his county. And so then he tried to make a comeback again in 38, and he did. He got elected to the legislature. So he comes in as a freshman in the House. He's never served in the House. He gets to be chairman of the most important committee, the Budget and Finance Committee, and trying to explain that. But it goes back to his relationship with the Anaconda Company.
Oh yeah, and that was very important back in those days.
So tell me about your father.
Well, my dad was a Democrat, and he resented the fact that the ACM controlled everything in Montana, but there wasn't a heck of a lot he could do about it. They pretty tightly controlled everything.
And the Missoulian was a...
Yeah, and Dad got along with them. He
senator here in Missoula.
Yeah, he didn't particularly. He was in business in Missoula, and
What was he doing? What was
He was the bulk gasoline agent for Standard Oil.
Okay.
So he had about 5 gasoline trucks that covered all the gas stations, and I'd say most of the large ranches around, all he delivered right to their ranch, brought their gas to them, their oils. And back in those days, the oil usually came in a 50-gallon barrel. So
Yeah.
he developed some very good forearms in wrestling those 50-gallon barrels around. But,
I had some familiarity with that, working on ranches and then driving tractors.
yeah. They all had their own gas tanks and.
And distillate.
Yeah.
Remember the tractors were driving on those.
So he ran twice for the legislature and was elected both times, but he was a veteran of World War I, and that was during the war years. So being a veteran of World War I, he finished number 1 on the ticket every time he ran. But after 2 terms, he only had a 6th grade education, and
Really?
because back in those days, you had to go to work, and
Where did he grow up?
in southern Minnesota, Mankato, Minnesota, yeah,
Okay.
a little town called Judson.
He's Irish? He was.
No, Scotch-Irish and half Welsh.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but
So
he,
what was his first name?
Dighton Little,
Dighton Little. Okay.
yeah.
And he served in the
I'd say
1943.
42 to 44, 4 years right around that area.
So it would have been the sessions of
42 to
1943
46, I guess it would have been, yeah, 42.
I remember seeing his name
Yeah.
on the signpost.
Yeah. He was a good man. I miss him. But after 2 terms, he decided he didn't have the education to really understand the bills like he wanted to, and so he said, to hell with it.
Warren, did he get impatient with the committee process, having to sit there and listen all the time? Was, one of the things that drives people from any legislature is how much patience you have to have.
Yeah.
To sit there listening to people.
I don't recall. I was away at school in Minnesota, a good part of that, so
Okay.
I didn't understand that. I visited him a few times his first term, and he was great friends with Forrest Anderson, who later became governor.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they were
Wow.
good buddies. And the galloping Swede, Aronson, he and Swede were very good friends, and he enjoyed his time back there. But he just said, "I don't have the education for it. To hell with it."
So what was his contact with Aronson?
They were just good friends in the legislature. He and Forrest Anderson and the Galloping Swede, and they stayed friends all their lives. Yeah,
Was Forrest Anderson in the legislature?
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. In fact, he sat right next to Dad, and
Oh, he
that's how
did?
they got to be buddies. Yeah.
But I wonder, was he representing Lewis and Clark County?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, Forrest Anderson went to law school, and he became Attorney General, right?
And he was Attorney General when I was admitted to the bar, and he kind of greased that situation for me when I went up to be admitted to the bar. Forrest took me by the hand and took me up. Yeah,
What year was that?
54,
Okay, right after you finished.
law
So you
school,
got your
yeah.
BA.
No, it'd be 56, I'm sorry, 54.
Well,
yeah.
you went in the Air Force right after
Then
that.
I went in, yeah. Went
'Cause
in
you and
there.
I were in ROTC together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you took Air Force ROTC.
Yeah, I was Air Force, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you did.
I wanted to go in the Marine Corps, though. In fact, I've got a hat that says USMC wannabe. Yeah. All during World War II, of course, I'd gone to military school for 2 years, so, and that was my choice. I wanted to wear a uniform during World War II. and all I could think of was I wanted to get into the Marine Corps just as soon as school was out. Well, by that time the war was over, and I went into college and got into the Air Force ROTC. I was very lucky. We're vets of the Korean War, but nobody ever shot at me. So,
Well, as I recall, you were mostly in Europe.
well, I got to Europe during my tour, but just on leave. I was in SAC, Strategic Air Command, and the planes from my base up in Maine went to Europe all the time and did 30-day tours. So I hitchhiked a ride to Europe and met Harvey Schliemann in Europe, and we did 30 days. We got all the way from Copenhagen in Denmark down to Naples in Italy in 30 days, and we just had a ball. We just had a wonderful time.
So, what was the years that you were in the Air Force then?
From 54 until 56.
Okay, you had 2 years there. Okay.
Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I'd finished law school by that time. And had been admitted to the bar, so they made me a judge advocate, and they worked my tail off. Some days I had 5 court-martials in one day. We'd defend for 3 months, and then we'd prosecute for 3 months. There were 5 lawyers in our office. We had a good time.
I was a legal officer in the Marine Corps, and I was the battalion legal officer, so I handled a lot of non-judicial.
The Article 15 stuff.
But I also represented some. Well, I only prosecuted one case ever, but I defended a number of people in court.
That defense was a tough gig. Usually they were guilty of sin. I got one guy off one time. I was the defense counsel on a general court-martial, and I got him off, and the general was very upset with me. He said, "Don't you know I fill out your efficiency report?"
Well, we have all that in common because I was in the battalion. I was in the 7th Cavalry, which Jerry Wilkham never let me forget. And we have this great song, Gary O. It was Custer's battalion or regiment, the 7th Cavalry. And so I was on. Infantry officers always have to. Part of their shtick is to be legal officers.
Yeah.
Not for generals, but for Article 15 mostly.
Yeah.
I had 3 or 4 cases, and every one got off, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't supposed to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about these kids other than, it was fun hearing their story, and then and usually it wasn't that they were guilty or not guilty; it was that the guys opposing them didn't do their homework.
Yeah. Well, I was very impressed with the quality of justice that we had, because I'd been on both sides of it, and I firmly was convinced that the quality of justice that was meted out was better than they would get in civilian life. I thought we had some sharp officers on those courts, and if the guy was not guilty, by God, they didn't care about command influence. He was found guilty, and if he was innocent, they found him innocent, and it was very good.
I agree.
Did you
with
have the same?
I had the same feeling that because I had comparisons with the civilian courts and when young Marines got into trouble, and I thought we had a fairer system, and certainly from the standpoint of making information available to the defense and as well as the prosecution, that sort of thing. I thought that the safeguards that the military had were quite commendable.
I had one case that I dearly loved. It was a general court-martial again, and the guy had escaped from the guardhouse. And what was interesting about it is I had put him in there because I'd been the prosecutor when he'd gone AWOL. So I got him into the guardhouse. Well, he escaped from the guardhouse. Well, the MPs did not take well to somebody escaping from their guardhouse. So they caught him about 10 miles from the base, and they just beat the crap out of him, which was kind of, it happened once in a while. And when I was assigned as defense counsel, so we're in this general court, and fortunately some of the MPs were friends of mine, and they told me, they said, he got tuned up pretty good, and he said, one guy took pictures of it. So I got him in my office, and by the time he left my office, I had the pictures. And I took him down to the base photo lab and had them all blown up. So here's this guy, his face is bloody, and his eye is black, and his blood is running down out of his nose, and these two MPs are standing on each side of him, very proud of themselves. You know, we just captured this guy. So I had him blown up, and I just laid in the weeds, and I let them testify. We arrested this guy and everything, and I'd say, and were you judge, jury, and executioner, and punish him right on the spot for his escaping? Oh, no, sir, we didn't do. Well, then I was in the driver's seat after that because I had him for perjury. And when they arrested the guy, they put him on bread and water in the brig, which that was what they did in the brig in those days. You got bread and water. And so he lost about 30 pounds between the time he was arrested and the time he went to trial. So here's this guy in the picture who's got this full face that's all blown up, and here's this little skinny guy now. And the judge, I got the pictures admitted into evidence, and they looked at that, and they had their staff sergeant from the MPs that just committed perjury, and so they said, well, he's guilty of escaping from the guardhouse, but for his punishment, he'll get an oral reprimand. that was the end of the case. Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't give him a discharge right at that point.
Yeah. Oh God.
Or at least discharge.
But I felt good about it. But I admire your service in the Marine Corps. I wish I'd gotten to it.
David, got in good shape. He wasn't particularly an athlete in high school, as I understand it.
I was not.
But he was a good farmhand. His
Yeah.
dad worked the shit out of him, I think.
Yeah.
And so he knew how to work,
Yeah.
and he knew how to think. So he comes out of the Marines, and he's really interested in running.
Yeah.
Just not for politics, just running. And years pass, he has a nice teaching job, and he can talk about that in a minute, but he did 100 miles. That's how much he enjoyed it. It was fast walking, but he, for most people it would be running, 3.5, 4 miles an hour. Can you imagine? You wouldn't do anything that way.
No,
But
no.
that's the nature of
That's
him.
why God gave us cars. Yeah.
And as your dad would say, horses.
Yeah.
Because your dad was a horse guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I had a ranch hand who said, if God had meant me to walk, he would have given me 4 legs. Instead, he gave me 2, which is the number I need to be on either side of the saddle.
Yeah. Well, Sasha's getting impatient here. We better.
So we got I don't know, David, you want to talk about it?
Well, the Missoulian used to be an anaconda paper.
Yeah.
It's changed now. What's your impression on the Missoulian?
I think they're out in left field, and I seldom read a lot of their material. Their subscription rates have fallen down to practically zero. Some days you pick up the paper and there's just a few pages in it. I've had several letters to the editor that they refuse to print, and so I have a very low opinion of them. Yes, my dad, when he was, and my mother, read two newspapers: the morning Missoulian, the afternoon Missoulian, and then they subscribed to the Spokesman Review because the Missoula paper was an ACM rag at the time, and so I'm not impressed with the Missoulian, no. I was very surprised to see them recommend the Republican Gianforte for the congressional seat. I thought, what the heck, it was, but they reversed before the election, they reversed their field.
You mean in the special election?
Yes, for the special election.
But they reversed it on the election day?
Yeah.
Because of the incident.
Well,
Is that the only reason?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. But I was the lone Republican protester at the Bernie Sanders rally in Missoula, and there were 4,000 people that showed up to hear Bernie Sanders, and even the body slamming incident didn't bother me. As far as I was concerned, if I've got a guy going back to Congress to represent me, I'd rather have a fighter there than a guitar picker. And that's another example, the Missoulian. The past history of the Democratic candidate was terrible, and he was in a malpractice suit, and the lawyer for the doctor brought out his terrible background and his lack of character and the fact that he had a sexually transmitted disease. Well, did that ever hit the paper? Oh no, it didn't hit the paper. So my sign at the protest rally was, if you're going to get in bed with the Democratic candidate, you better wear protection. So I was complimented by several of the Democrats there. They said, "Good sign, Warren, good sign."
So you were the only person there with
I was the only protester at the Bernie Sanders rally. Yeah, and that.
What happened to Hurt?
Well, he's in the other county. He's down there in Ravalli County. So
he drives into Missoula once in a while.
Yeah. Now, is David coming up here?
No, apparently not. No.
I'll be darned.
Well, I'm guilty of losing my connection with him, and I tried various ways, and I've been in one of those periods of life where me and my computer are not working very well together. So even when you go on the white pages, you get on all these other commercial outfits, and I wasn't about to pay $100 or whatever you needed to pay to get access. I didn't want to know about his criminal record and this and that. I wanted to have his phone number.
Yeah.
So
well,
I was hoping you would contact him also, but
yeah. Well, I did. I thought we were coming
because I really wanted him here. He's a voice to be reckoned with, and he does speak for other people.
He's deeply believing in the political system, and he works in it very hard. He does. He works very hard at it. But he's a little to the right of Attila the Hun, but...
Do you think he would identify with these kind of white supremacists up at Whitefish?
Oh, God, no. And that is... that's typical. of what's happened, John. Whenever anybody raises a voice, oh, you're racist, and it just, he's no more racist than the man in the moon.
So the central issues for her, which sometimes I know you identify with, but it isn't speaking for you, is essentially the federal system getting powers back to the state and the local level to make the decisions, raise the taxes.
I think that's a big part of it, and I think people were just fed up with this trend toward socialism, and I come from a generation, and David does, where communists were evil, and they were trying to kill us. They were shooting at us, and to me, there's not much difference between a communist and a socialist. And Bernie Sanders would be the last person in the world I'd want to see in power. And the Democratic Party is not the party of Kennedy. I voted for Kennedy. I voted for the peanut farmer. But this Democratic Party is so far out there in left field that people want to see it jerk back into proper perspective, and to have a Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist, up there stumping for the Democratic candidate was ludicrous, you know, and especially with a candidate like that, who had no political experience, no knowledge. He's a guitar player, well, whoopee, you know.
What attracted you to Jimmy Carter?
I didn't go by the party. I went by the man, and I thought he was a very intelligent, sharp guy with good ideas. And I proudly wore a little gold chain with a gold peanut on it. And I was in the FBI then down in California, and I just thought he was an honest man. He had integrity. He'd been a naval officer, and I thought he was the best man. And that's the way I voted. Who do I think is the best man for the job? And I was very proud of the fact that since Eisenhower, every president that I voted for won. Every one won. And so my judgment was not too shabby. I voted for Clinton twice. I thought he did a good job. I voted for the Bushes. I thought they were better. There again, a lot of times their opponents were too far out in left field. When I was in the FBI, I worked Communist Matters for probably 4 or 5 years, and had informants in the Communist Party. We knew more about what the Communist Party was doing than they did. And they tried to infiltrate the teachers union, and the House Committee on Un-American Activities had a hearing in San Francisco when I was there. And the communists brought in a bunch of radicals from Berkeley to start a riot. And I don't know, you probably never heard of it, but they had the City Hall riots there in about 63, 64, and I was there, and they subpoenaed witnesses to testify that the communists were trying to infiltrate the teachers union. They asked their union people, quit the union and join the teachers group, get a job as a teacher, and they were doing it by the drove, so they subpoenaed a bunch of them, and the communists couldn't stand that, so they had to stop the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and they did. And
you know, Warren, I think that was 1958. It was HUAC, House Un-American Activities Committee.
They were active back in the 50s, but they were still effective right up there until 64.
I was just thinking about the particular incident where you were there. You said that you thought it was 62 or 63, but I think it was 58.
No, I know it was 64. Those City Hall riots.
Okay, that was a different
There was
hearing.
a film Oh, it was going on since '58. Yeah, there's no doubt
Because I
about it.
was there in '58. You
Yeah.
and I had this discussion one time about I was outside and you were inside. I was there just to look at my students and see
Yeah.
what they were doing. There wasn't any riots when I was there in '58.
Well, there were in '64.
Yeah, well-
They arrested probably, I don't know, I forget the numbers, but
Well,
the San Francisco Police Department turned the fire hose on them
Right.
and washed them down the steps of City Hall in San Francisco.
Yeah, that
And
was
it
about '62. A lot of that communist activity was supported by the Soviet Union, wasn't it? By Soviet intelligence.
Well,
They had agents all around the United States.
yeah, but the Soviets really, they were working spies. The Rosenbergs, the Soviets had an active, but again, we're getting into an area here where now the Democrats are beating this Soviet thing. I probably am not impressed with the degree of Soviet interference into our system. I think it's an issue that they're trying to drum up some support. I don't think the man on the street gives a hoot. And I don't think Montana gives a hoot about what the Soviets are doing, what they did on the internet to influence our. I don't think they really care. And they don't think it. They think it's a phony issue, and I think it is. Back in those days,
Comey, who was director of the FBI,
back
making
in,
up a phony issue.
back in those days, the Soviets were sending money to the Communist Party.
Right.
And they were sending money to practically any. That was one of the reasons Bobby Kennedy wanted Martin Luther King under surveillance. One of his big advisors was a member of the Communist Party, and they were afraid that they were going to influence Martin Luther King to be a leader of something that could result in chaos. That was the way the communists worked. Create chaos and create all this turmoil, and then they were the only ones that really were organized, and they would take over. And they've done it in country after country.
So you don't think Putin and the KGB is not doing that anymore?
I really don't. I really don't. I don't think it.
What accounts for the
I think they're probably hacking into systems, but I think we're doing the same thing. I think anybody who's semi-smart in intelligence work is trying to hack into the enemy, and it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in England or if you're in France, you're trying to hack into the enemy, and I don't doubt that they've hacked into us, and I just hope our security is good enough to resist.
Well, Comey's played a central role in this as head of the FBI, and Comey, and I know there have been a series of directors since Hoover. I know you worked for Hoover, you liked him, you admired him. Have there been any directors since Hoover that you feel were up to the mark or were of his stature?
No. No.
Okay.
No. I was a big believer in Mr. Hoover, and what they've done to him since his death is just shameful. He was as straight as you could get. We had agents on him 24 hours a day. If he'd been a cross-dresser or if he'd had any character defect, you can bet we would have known about it. And they did not publish this erroneous information about him until after he died. And that's the way those guys work. They put the scurrilous stuff out after the person's dead and can't sue them. And there's really, I mean, I think you've seen the media will feed on this stuff just because it's sensational. It sells papers, and it's too bad because the guy devoted his life. I'm good. The guy devoted his life to the Bureau, and I thought, yeah.
I'll get it for you.
Oh, okay. And among the directors since then, who would you say has done the best job?
I thought Louis Free was a good job. I thought Louis Free did a good job.
And he had the job.
And I think Mueller did a good job, but I've tried to retain some friends in the Bureau, but practically all of them have retired.
I would think so.
So, yeah, they've all retired. In fact, just a girl that I recruited for the FBI is here from Missoula, and now she's retired. And that really made me feel old. But, no, I think the FBI is doing a good job, but again, I have a very low opinion of politicians, and when you get a politician and put them in a job like that, I don't think anything good is going to come of it. I have yet to see a problem addressed by a politician that was ever better for his interference. And that's what I liked about Hoover, because if you tried to pull political influence, say you were a criminal, and you had some political influence, and you tried to exert that influence, his response was, send more men to work that case harder. And he was not intimidated by politicians.
Then who do you see as the politicians among the successors to Hoover?
Well, I think pretty much all of them have been. You even in Comey, if you look in his background, he had some ties with Hillary. He had some ties with the Democrats. He was appointed by Obama, and to me, Obama isn't going to appoint anybody that he can't control. So I'm very, and I think most people are just so fed up with politicians that Trump, I don't know that he's going to be able to do the job, but I hope he does, and I think he's a businessman primarily, and I think maybe he can do the job because he's not attacking it like a politician would, and that I like that. I just hope he has some success, but the Democrats are just obstructing him in every possible way. The media is attacking him in every. That's why I seldom read the Missoulian anymore. Every article is just so slanted and biased against him, and I think what it's doing is boomeranging on the Democrats, and I think people are taking the position, let's get rid of the obstructionists. We don't care whether they're Republican or Democrat. If they're obstructing the plan to get America great again and to overcome our weaknesses, let's get rid of them. And it doesn't matter if it's McCain from Arizona or who's ever not going along with the program, get rid of them. Let's vote them out. And I think that's what's happened. And I think people, they're not happy with the education that our kids are getting anymore. And you were in education, John, and I think you've seen. Do you ever watch the television and see the interviews of some of these millennials? They'll ask them who fought in the Civil War. Germany, or they have no knowledge of history. They've been sandbagged for so many years about, oh God, we gotta save the humpback whale and the dotted woodpecker. They don't know even who was in World War I. They're just completed. And to me, if you don't know history, you're going to fail and repeat the bad parts. Most of my intelligent friends don't send their kids to public school. They either homeschool them or they send them to the Catholic school. And you could go down the list here in Missoula of the prominent doctors, lawyers, and their kids generally aren't going to the public school. And I just think it's a shame.
Well, that's a big change. You felt okay with Missoula High School, right?
I went to Missoula High School, right?
Did you feel okay about the
I did,
teaching you
and I
had
thought
there?
we got a darn good education, and I was most impressed with a teacher by the name of Bob Watt. And Bob was just a super guy, and one of the courses that we had to take was civics. And you got a good education about what the system was all about. And I don't think they're getting that education anymore, John.
Bob Watt went on to become a politician
He did.
and a Democrat
He did. He
and
did.
a liberal.
Yeah.
And when I came here,
But that party that he belonged to is not the present party.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he was a veteran, as I recall. And to him, the word communist was a bad word.
now,
Right now, to most of these young kids, they don't know a communist from an orangutan. And I think
do you think that's characteristic in Montana, or are you talking about the nation when you say that?
I think it's pretty well all over. Yeah, I don't think it's just in Montana. I think it's all
Because
over.
one of the things that David and I we're doing about 20 interviews, and we're trying to get at what people feel about Montana versus the national scene. And whatever the issue, whether it be education or health or security, policing, fire, but education is certainly a big part. Do you think the Montana scene is quite different than the national scene in that
I
regard?
don't know. I've traveled in every one of the 50 states, and I think there's a big difference between rural and city. And I lived in LA, I lived in San Francisco, I've lived in Sacramento, I've lived in some of the big towns. And just recently, in fact, I was in California on election day, and to read their papers, it made me ill. It really did. There's a big difference between the coast and the rural area. And there was that difference when we were kids, David. I can remember going down to California, and as soon as I'd get out into the rural area, I just felt better. The people were more sensible. They had a more down-to-earth approach. They were more practical. I think the more rural we get, better the civilization is, and that's why I live in Montana. And I think our people have their heads screwed on right. And
But you live in the most liberal town in Montana.
well, that's because I was born here. And it's the big thing I don't like about Missoula.
But why don't you live in the valley?
Well, I'm living on the place that we moved to in 1942. so I'm back home.
And it was a great investment on your
It
parents'
was a
farm.
great investment, and yeah.
You know, we have another classmate who both Dinah and I liked, and her name is Doris Peterson. And she lived right across the stream over here in, 120 acres or something?
Yeah, 160, I think. Yeah.
So she just passed away, but she was a great gal. And
She was. Yeah,
she married
I tried to date her several times. I took her skiing a couple times, but she was too smart for me. She saw what I had in mind. Yeah, she was a nice gal. And John and I went up to see her shortly before she died. Yeah, nice gal. We had some great kids in our class, and they all did pretty darn well. But unfortunately, there's not many of us left.
one of the things that happened in our class, most of the National Honor Society people went someplace else. A few stayed, like Bill Reynolds. I think Joan Orvis may have been one. I don't know that. I'll be talking to her tomorrow, by the way, and Steve, her husband. But Petey was on the National Honor Society, and she's a bright gal. And they didn't go out of Montana. She married Joe Luckman, who was my fraternity brother. And I didn't think he was smarter than me, but she did.
Yeah.
So she married Joe Luckman.
Well, he was also a lot better looking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do you think she was that superficial?
He had a lot going for him. Yeah. He just didn't run around in circles. Yeah.
Well, Joe ran faster than I did too, at least for a short distance. He was a really good looking guy. So was his brother. You remember Mick?
Yeah.
His brother?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to kind of pursue, of course, nobody else has had FBI background as you have. And you're maybe more outspoken than a lot of our classmates about your point of view.
Yes, I think I am.
And you know me well enough to know that I am too. But this thing is not about me or David. We're both really curious how people feel.
Well, I applaud you for your effort, and I hope you gain some insight, because this political thing is going to be with us forever, and I hope we get it right. And I'm not at all confident that we are, but
well, look at the
hopefully
Republicans.
we're on the right path.
Republicans have run both houses, right, in the legislature, and you dominate the
but just
the Congress.
The numbers aren't the true answer, but I think the voters are finally getting it, that get rid of the obstructionists, and that's why I think the Democrats lost so heavily in the last election. And I think it's improving. I think people are becoming more politically aware, and I think they're saying, hey, why doesn't our system work? The Republicans have the majority. Why can't they make it work? And it's because they can't get past the obstructionists. And once they get past the obstructionists, maybe we're going to get it right. I don't know.
Who do you see as the obstructionists?
Well, anybody who's voting against the plan of making America great again. Yeah.
But the Republicans are having difficulty getting agreement on that.
Well, they are, and just because you're a Republican doesn't make you smart. I think we've got some guys in there that just need to be voted out, and get somebody in there that. Some of the young Republicans that are coming in on the national scene, I've been very impressed with. There's Tom Cotton. Have you followed him at all?
I have.
And There was a guy
How
out
do you
of,
feel about SAS, S-A-S?
about who?
SAS, S-A-S-S-E, out of Nebraska, Senator SAS.
I've read a little bit about him, and what I've read about him seems to be good. Yeah.
But you haven't listened to him on C-SPAN.
No, I haven't. I haven't. No.
I find him quite impressive. He's
Yeah.
a bright guy.
Yeah.
He may have been a Rhodes Scholar. He's a university president. He's still a young guy.
Yeah.
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 But
No, I think.
he's a conservative in
Yeah.
the usual sense. But my interest, Diet, is I think the conservatives are having a war between one another. What does it mean to be an American conservative? And I celebrated when Trump got elected because I felt, okay, this is going to force people who call themselves conservatives to look at each other and find that they're a very divided group. American conservatives have a war among one another. And I think that's what's happening in Congress right now. Now, that's obviously my opinion, but following along David's question, it's been easy to say the Democrats are the obstructionists, and of course the Democrats used to say the Republicans are the obstructionists.
Yeah.
But to my mind, the most interesting issue isn't the Democrats, it's the Republicans and defining who is a conservative.
Well, I don't think we really even give a darn about who's a conservative and who isn't. It's just, let's get this country together and get it organized. I mean, it's just chaotic. Our tax code, I thought that gal who ran in the Republican primary, who wanted to reduce the tax code to 3 pages, sounds like a plan to me. I mean, it shouldn't be so complicated that you have to hire. I took tax law in law school. I don't fill out my own tax return. It's too confusing. And it was written that
Or
way.
you make too much money.
It was really, it needs to be simplified. And I think that's what people want. They want government out of their lives. They want things done. And if you're an obstructionist, I don't care if you're a Republican or what you call yourself, a conservative or a liberal, let's just start getting things done. And if you've got a plan for a better tax plan, let's hear it. And let's vote for it, and let's get it in.
You see health issue essentially the same way?
I do. I think there's some smart people out there who have studied why do we have to reinvent the wheel. We've got some very brilliant people in the health services. We've had some experiments with different types of health plans. We've gotten to the point where now a great number of our population expect free health care, no matter what's wrong with them, no matter whether they've had a good lifestyle, whether they've been drinking and smoking and raising hell, or what. I think we've got to address the problem and try to solve it, and not this obstructionist business. Let's work together. Get it. You're not getting that cooperation in Congress yet, and I'm saying, I think the people are screaming, for God's sake, get your act together.
Do you think that's true in the Montana legislature also?
I do. I think we're, of course, you always attract, unfortunately, people who've got a hidden agenda, and when they get out there and get a chance to introduce their goofy bills, they do it, and I don't know.
How about
I'm very frustrated by the health plan. I think, have we looked at the Australian plan? That seems to be working. I communicate with some people over in New Zealand and Australia, and I've traveled extensively in New Zealand. I don't know much about the Australian system, but a lot of what I heard I like. But this business of expecting us to pick up the tab on a bunch of unhealthy people who have just abuse their body and their system. I don't know where it says that we've got to give free medical health care to everybody. How did that evolve? You know, I think you got to be responsible for the status of your health. And if you smoked for 50 years or you've been doing booze for 50 years, you can't expect that the taxpayer is going to pay to keep you alive. As far as I'm concerned, you know.
So you would deny Medicare to people who smoked?
No, but I'd make them pay for their health care. I think if you want to have an unhealthy lifestyle, that's fine, but I don't want to pay for it.
And so if they run out of money,
you look in Asia, and John has been over there a lot. If you don't work, you don't eat, and if you don't eat, you die, and that's too bad. And that's the way they look at it. And I think I believe in having some level of support for the people who have unfortunate illness and things like that. But I think there has to be some responsibility for your own condition.
I've got to interject since you raised my name in this regard. I think both China and Korea, South Korea and Japan have changed a lot, so that if you're a Japanese or a South Korean or a Chinese, doesn't matter, you get health care.
Yeah.
If you're in the street, cops will pick you up and put you in and you're sick and you don't have any money, they'll put you in a hospital. And they've got, particularly for old people, they've got facilities. They're not very nice. I wouldn't want to be in them. You wouldn't want to be in them, but they take care of them.
Yeah.
So that you just don't see fat people, minorities, anybody in the street anymore.
No.
In the countryside in China, you still do, but as you know, over half of Chinese are urban. They've got all these new cities, and they've got terrible air. You know, the worst air in the world.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of an aside. I didn't mean to give it. David, do you have any more questions? David, I can tell he's getting antsy.
Yeah, well, you said you had voted for every president. I find it difficult to believe you voted for Obama.
I voted for him the first time.
Oh, you did?
And because I knew he was going to win, and I wanted to keep my streak going. Up until that point, I'd been an honest voter. But the first time Obama ran, I said, he's going to win. I'll vote for him to keep my streak going. Because at that time, how long am I going to live, you know? Let's keep the streak going. But the second time he ran, I said, to hell with the record, I'm not voting.
Oh, okay.
So did you vote for McCain?
I broke the string now. I broke the string. But,
Did you vote for McCain?
no.
The second, well, wasn't, no,
It was Romney.
Romney. You voted for Romney.
I voted for him.
Okay. Well,
And I wasn't a real big fan of his either, but yeah,
I remember
I
one
couldn't
time-
vote for Obama a second time. Yeah, I just said to heck with the string. We're not going to go there.
Well, none of us are perfect.
Yeah,
So you had to go most of your life before you realized you weren't perfect.
yeah, we tried.
So
But
David,
I think it's going to be an interesting time, John, and I think you've seen the coastal states and the larger population kind of against the rural section. And I think Montana is a good cross section of America and why Americans are the way they are, and just the type of people that we have here. It's just it's neat. I like Montanans, and I think we've got a great thing going here.